But welcome everyone to the next webinar in our Lunch and Learn series. This is a series that we've been running since early March, and it's been running every other Wednesday. And this is our second to last one. Our next one will be in 2 weeks on May 20th. This webinar, we're going to be learning about how to find butterflies based on their associations with different habitats. And our presenter today, who many of you already know, is Kent McFarland. He's the conservation biologist at Vermont Center for Ecostudies, and he's also the founder of the Vermont Atlas of Life, which is this giant effort that VCE is going through to try and document pretty much every living thing in Vermont, which is, of course, just a tiny task that Kent has decided to take on. And documenting things have included things like lady beetles and freshwater mussels, and of course the butterfly atlas, which we'll be talking about today. So before we jump in, just want to remind people two things. First, this is being recorded and it will be sent out to everyone afterwards. So if you do put on your camera, just be aware that you might be visible in that recording. So just be aware of, what you're doing on that camera. I've got everyone muted right now, but throughout the talk, you're welcome to either drop questions in the chat or unmute yourself and just ask Kent a question. He's happy to be interrupted, hear stories from people, get questions, etc. And with that, I think that's all of my preamble, and we're ready to jump in. So Kent, I turn it over
Cool.
to you.
Great. Thank you. Welcome everyone today. Yeah, I'm happy to be interrupted for questions or if you have additional information. There's a lot of people that are going to be on this call that know a ton of information too. So put it in the chat or raise your hand or whatever. I'm totally fine with it. This is just a place for all of us to learn and do better on the Butterfly Atlas by learning. Um, and I'm really excited that so many people have been coming to these and also coming and watching the recorded episode of these too. So there might be, I don't know how many people are on this call right now, but I can tell you that a lot of people who can't make it watch them recorded. So if you have information, definitely let's all share it. And then the other thing I'd say is don't forget we have a listserv called VT Leps, an email listserv, and that's another amazing place to have conversations. And we haven't been having very many there lately, but if you have a question or have a neat observation, like really put it on VT Leps. Like everyone loves to know what you're seeing because it helps them go and find the same thing maybe on their blocks. And plus, there's tons of people there to answer questions. Okay, that said, finding butterflies in your block. I mean, it's really, this is like, I call this host plants habitat and a little luck because it really is all about that. And there's, I've mentioned Kevin Hemming a couple times in this talk during this call. And, I'm not mentioning it just because he's here. I'd mention it even if he wasn't here, but Kevin is like the epitome of this host plants habitat and a little luck. And I learned that from him in the first Atlas. And I being out in the field with him, he does this. He figures out like, hey, what are the host plants of butterflies like? Where are those host plants? What habitat is it? And then have a little luck and go find it and maybe you'll find them flowering. And so ever since the first Atlas when out with Kevin and he kept saying that and coming up with places for us to go, I realized how really important it is to be a naturalist, an overall naturalist, to really be a good butterfly watcher. So really, it's finding butterflies. I call it the habitat pathway, and it's like the first thing you want to do is learn what host plants the butterflies are using, and maybe you don't even know what that means, but host plants are what butterfly caterpillars, their larvae, are feeding on. And so we all know, most of us know, like okay, monarchs they lay their eggs and then they feed on milkweed. A lot of fritillaries use violets. Spicebush swallowtail is called spicebush swallowtail because they feed on spicebush. And so when we start to learn the host plants, it starts to give us a really good cue for where we might find the butterfly. And so once we know the host plant, like I said, then we can figure out like, hey, what habitat or what natural community is that plant or those plants found in? And so you might find out, okay, spicebush. Hey, it likes moist forest edges. It's only going to be found in southern Vermont. So, wow, my block is in northern Vermont. I'm not going to find a spicebush swallowtail unless it's like just an aberrant flyer. But if my block is in the southern edge of the southern, is on the southern border of Vermont, I got a good shot at finding spice bush swallowtail. I need to learn where spice bush is growing. So then you start figuring out like where's the habitat going to be on my block. And then if you're lucky and you've done your homework, it's all about timing, behavior, and then that big confirmation, that photograph that you get to share on eButterfly or iNaturalist for the Atlas, and then tick off another one for your block so you find the butterfly. So you have to be, after you have those two things, I know the host plan, I know the habitat. Now I'm in the habitat. I'm at the right time in the habitat, on the right day in the habitat, and there comes an adult flying by me, or there's a caterpillar feeding on the plant, and I tick it off. So that's it. All there is to it. The webinar is over. You know everything you need to know now. Really, that is all there is to it, but it's not over. Really, the devil's in the details. And this is probably why I got so excited about butterflies years ago, is because I realized I like being a naturalist. I like all the stories out there in nature. And being a butterfly watcher is about learning all these stories from host plant through habitat to the butterfly, learning all these stories so you can actually see the butterfly. And so let's just talk a little bit about stories. Um, but first, I'm going to make us learn a little bit of science lingo. So when we're talking about host plants and host plant breadth of butterflies, if you look at this chart that I made real quick, you have host plants that it's called monophagous, and that means the butterfly is only feeding on one plant, and it's usually either one genus or even sometimes one species of plant. And so it's a really narrow breadth of their host plant. Zooming across over to polyphagous, which is broad, like painted ladies, which we can see like all around the world, really. I've seen painted ladies in Italy before, and we're talking about 300 species of host plants plus. So they are cosmopolitan. They're on all kinds of stuff. They migrate. You can see them anywhere. And then somewhere in between, it's just like, I sort of use one group of host plants, one probably plant family. So something like black swallowtail, it only likes things in the carrot family. So we find them on our gardens, we find them out in fields on anything that's in the carrot family feeding on it. And if you look at this, if you think about this, the very narrow host plant species to the very broad, that is also often has to do with conservation too. It's often those that have very narrow host plant species that they have are the ones that are the biggest conservation concern because they're probably going to have a very narrow habitat type. To the very broad are often the ones that are like our common species that probably aren't in trouble. We have to keep our eye on them because they can have problems. And so really, when we start to think about this, like butterflies that are hard to find on our blocks, hard to find in Vermont, they're probably going to trend towards being monophagous. And those that are really easy to find, they probably feed on all kinds of plants. And so starting to understand that is really key um, point. So a side note, a little bit about Baltimore checker spot. This is one of those the stories about plants and natural history. So this is an amazing plant. The host plant for this species is white turtlehead. I'm sure a lot of you have seen white turtlehead. And so now you know Baltimore checker spot. If I'm going to find it on my block, I need to find a place that has white turtlehead. Well, you're going to find white turtlehead probably in some kind of wetland. And it's probably going to be in some kind of wetland that's a little bit acidic sometimes. And it could be a wetland that's like a dumpy little wetland along a road, or it could be a beautiful wetland somewhere off that's not even touched. But once you figure out where to find white turtlehead, you're gonna find Baltimore checker spot, which is unbelievably gorgeous. And it's also bright orange. The caterpillar is bright orange and the butterfly is bright orange. And just like monarchs, there's a reason it's bright orange. They feed on this plant, white turtlehead. It's the only one they really feed on naturally. And that plant has these glycosides that are poisonous. And the one that this plant has is catapult. And it turns out that that plant has it because it's trying to fend off things from having herbivory. It doesn't want to be fed on. But it turns out that Baltimore checker spots can feed on it. It doesn't make them die like other species might, but it actually they can sequester that poison into them. And so the caterpillars and then the adults, just like monarchs, become distasteful and poisonous too. And so that aposematic coloration, that orange bright coloration is a warning to everything else like, hey, do not eat me. I am going to taste really bad. But here's the coolest thing. There's really a lot of interactions that are going on here. This up here, this picture of the turtlehead flower is actually a bumblebee butt sticking out of there that I took while I was trying to find Baltimore checker spot caterpillars. It turns out that bumblebees specialize in this plant, even though this poison is also in their nectar too. But yet the bumblebees are still going to it. They land on this tongue and they crawl inside there and lap up all the nectar, which is also poisonous. And you'd think like, huh, why isn't it not poisoning the bumblebees? It turns out work done by Leif Richardson, who worked on the Bumblebee Atlas with us years ago, did his dissertation at Dartmouth on this, and it turns out that the bumblebees are like using this as a medicine. And so they get this parasite, this gut parasite up here, this wicked little thing with a tail. This gut parasite, if they're feeling a little ill, they'll go more to this white turtlehead, feed on the white turtlehead, and it sort of semi-poisons the bumblebee, but they can deal with it. But it does poison the parasite and gets rid of the parasite from them. So they're kind of self-medicating using white turtlehead. So amazing natural history story to me here that like bumblebees, they feel ill and they start to go to plants like this to actually start to get medicine to get rid of parasites. So a story that started out in my head about butterflies went to bumblebees, went to this crazy plant. This is the kind of thing you start to learn when you're trying to find butterflies on your block. Okay, back to this breadth of butterflies. Um, this is really important. We're going to think about it a lot, and this is really the key to finding butterflies besides the stuff that are common. If you're down here on this end of the spectrum, on the broad spectrum, a normal butterfly walk anywhere, you're probably gonna, if you do it enough on your block, you're gonna run into all the common stuff. You know, you go to this habitat, you know, an old field, you go to this, you walk an old road, you do that, you're gonna find all these common species, really, probably in the end, if you do it enough. But if you're down at this end, the narrow end, you gotta be starting to think about specific habitats that you're gonna want to hit. Um, and there's two resources that everyone could use. There's more than that, but I'm telling you, there's two that are really amazing. This book, Butterflies of the East Coast: An Observer's Guide by Rick Check from 2005, is out of print, even in paperback, but you can still get it on Amazon. It's not very cheap on Amazon. It's like 30 bucks. But you can go to Princeton University Press and get the e-version of it for 15 bucks. And I actually have had it a long time, since 2005, I think. And mine's the hardcover, and I've worn it out. And the great thing about this thing is every single page in here has an East Coast butterfly on it, and it tells you how to ID it, the host plants known to be used, the habitat you're going to find it in, all when's the flight period generally. It's got everything in it on one page. But the key thing is what are the habitats and what are the host plants? And so I've worn mine out. This is actually an amazing book that I pull out constantly. In fact, it just sits on my desk really. I pull it out so much. And you couple that with all the information you can dig into and go down to the big rabbit's hole in the Vermonts of life, which I'll show you in a little bit. You combine these two, and you've got a powerful weapon for coming up with ways to go and find butterflies on your block. And also a powerful way to avoid watching Netflix and other things like that because you will spend all your time going down amazing rabbit holes about butterflies and their plants doing this. And it's super fun. So these two resources, there's a lot of others that you'll go down, especially on the internet, the rabbit hole. But if you start off with these two resources, this book and the site Vermont House of Life, which you've all amazingly contributed to, um, you're going to be well on your way to figuring out a lot of the natural history behind butterflies and where to find them. And so a lot of you probably heard this story because I love this story from Sharon. In the first year of the Butterfly Atlas in the newsletter, I did a species spotlight um, for these two butterflies, the two emperors that are found in Vermont. This is a hackberry emperor. And I did a species spotlight, and Sharon saw the newsletter and she was like, "Oh." I should learn more about this butterfly and look it up. And so she did that and then actually eventually found a hackberry emperor. And I love what she wrote. This is actually, I took this quote this morning right off of her checklist in eButterfly. This is Sharon's quote that you can read. I'm not going to read it to you, but I love the ending, which is heart goes pitter pat when she found the butterfly. In a nutshell, what Sharon did was she realized like, huh, I'd really like to see this on my survey block or somewhere around my house. And so she lives in Burlington. And so she saw, okay, hackberry emperor, I can look up and see how to ID that thing. And it also says in Kent's little story here, oh, it uses hackberry trees. So she went to Val, an iNaturalist, and said, "Hey, how do I ID hackberry trees?" And looked up hackberry trees. It was like, huh. And then she looked at the map on Val and was like, wait a second, there's hackberry trees right outside my office in Burlington, planted along the road. So then she decided every day at lunch, she'd go out there and just look at the trees and see if she'd see one. And one day, there was a hackberry emperor perched right on the tree. And so it's an amazing story where Sharon went from, I didn't even have this butterfly on my radar to, I'm going to go and research this a little bit, come up with its host plant, learn how to ID its host plant, see that the host plant is like right outside my office. And now I'm going to go visit it until I find the butterfly. And bingo, one day there's the butterfly. That's her picture right there on the trunk of one of the hackberry trees. So this is like a tiny story about like what you can do with every single butterfly. You might not find it, but one day, again, her heart went pitter pat because she found it, and all that work paid off. Um, so if we look at this web time, so what would Sharon do? How would she do this? Well, I just want to show you really quickly because a lot of people don't know, and I'm gonna skip out of this show to live internet and make mistakes. So here we go. So what a lot of people don't know is you can go to the Vermont of Life and search the Atlas really means search the Atlas. So you can put hackberry in here or any species you want to and hit search is it's really what you do. And so you can start to see like, oh, hackberry butterfly, Celtis, American hackberry. Oh, okay. And you click on American hackberry. That's the tree. And boom, what comes up is a story about American hackberry. Here's it's found all over the place, and you can see like, oh, it was first found in Vermont, 1880, last seen recently. Um, and then you can see how many records there are. Oh, okay. You can actually click on the records and then drills in a map. And so in Sharon's case, she's like, oh, wow. Or all of us, let's look at this. If we want to find hackberry emperors, we're going to have hackberry trees. So if you look at this, you're going to see like, wow, they go the whole way up the Connecticut River. There's even one aberrant record way up here, which is amazing. And they're in the Champlain Valley. And so you can actually zoom in on the map if you want. You can zoom in really close and find out like I think Sharon works at UVM, so we could zoom in on UVM, and I think you'll see that like, oh wait, there's records in UVM on along the campus. And so that's how you know she found that where the hackberry was. So you can find anything you want on here about where plants are, about them, read the quick description of them. If you go to the bottom of any of the plants, you could really dig in by going to citations, but also here at the bottom of every one of these, you can go and look at everything here. Here's the iNaturalist link. Here's, Michigan flora. Like you could spend forever reading about this tree right here by just going to these links and keep learning more and more and more and more. There's Go Botany is on here, which is the botany for the New England. So it's a huge resource underneath all of this stuff. There's pictures of it, they range, everything. And that's all just from starting off at the Vermont of Life, the main search engine on the main page right here. And so it's easy. You can follow up anything and learn all kinds of stuff here. The second thing then you could do then is look where the butterflies already been seen. And so we can actually go to the project, explore the atlases. So here's all the different atlases we have. We can go to the Second Butterfly Atlas. And here we can search butterflies. And this is great because you can see we have a lot of butterfly records, all 120 species. There's 50 data sets feeding this, including the first atlas, tons of images. Look how many contributors we've had to this data set. 3,700 people, all of you included. It's unbelievable what we've done over the last couple decades together as a team. And now we have it all right here where we can search for it. So we can put in hackberry and go to it real quickly. And you'll see like, oh, yep, Hackberry Emperor. There you go. 151 records. So again, we can click on Hackberry Emperor and we can look at Hackberry Emperor and find out what's the phenology. Oh, well, forget it. I'm not going to start looking at it until June. May, I'm not going to find it unless it's a caterpillar or something. And so June is the time, the whole way through is when I'm going to start looking for it. Another cool thing is history right here, just to show you the power of this is like when we started the first atlas. It was discovered by the first atlas, this species. It was not known in Vermont before the first atlas. So we discovered it right here. And look how many records now we have of people just every year finding this thing. So this is the power of getting everybody out there looking and helping to find things. So we got the phenology here for you to look at. And again, we have the records. You can go to a map and see where they've been known already and zoom in on your block and find them there. So it's an amazing resource, this site here too. The other thing you can do is we have a couple of tools on the side here. We have the priority block checklist tool, which is a new thing I'll show you in a second. The block mapper tool, which we'll get to. And we have this is brand new that we just built yesterday, the flight times tool. I'll show you that real quick. So you had one species where I showed you the phenology, but here you can actually, we know this is the week is orange right now. And so you can actually change it from a chart to a heat map, depending on your likings. You can sort for stuff. You can sort this whole thing. But the best thing is like, oh, I want to know what's going to happen, this coming week. It'll sort everything to the most likely butterflies by flight. You can see at the beginning. So you can get a sense for what you can see. And, maybe you ID'd something like Arctic skipperling and it's only this week right here. And well, it's probably not going to be likely. So you better get a good picture of it kind of deal. So this flight chart here is a great place for you to go and see what's flying right now before you go out, or even afterwards when you bring your pictures back and start to do things with them and try to ID them all. And this is really fast now. I updated the whole thing, and it comes from all 126,000 records. So there's a lot of data in here with these flight charts. So that's a great tool. The priority checklist tool we'll get to in a little bit. I'll show you that after a while. But the idea here, what I wanted to really show you is really what Sharon did, which was go to the web, go to the Vermont of Life, use this book, figure out like what's the host plant? Oh, it's right outside my office, kind of thing. It's not hard in some cases if you start to dig into it and have your targets like that. So that's just a quick, using some tools on the web. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, let's take a look at this incredibly busy slide, but I'm going to pick it apart for you. So how do we atlas? I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page because this is super important for where we're finding the butterflies and achieving our goals for the atlas and how we do it. So you can see that all the atlases I listed over here on this block up here have used this block system. It was the first breeding bird atlas back in 1976 that came up with this block system. And ever since then, the second breeding bird atlas used it. And I can tell you the third breeding bird atlas is coming in 2027, and it is going to use all these same blocks too. We used these blocks for the first butterfly atlas in 2002 to 2007. We used them for the bumblebee atlas, the lady beetle atlas, and now here we are with the second butterfly atlas. And what it is, the sampling scheme is there's the entire state is gridded into these blocks, but we can't do the entire state. There's thousands of these blocks. I think there's 1,100 some blocks. So back in 1976, they picked 184 priority blocks that turned out to be very nicely situated in the biophysical regions, evenly situated, thankfully, because biophysical region idea came much later after 1976. But thankfully, um, they are spread nicely across Vermont ecologically. There's 184 of them. And so for us to get this butterfly atlas done, the second atlas done, we need to do at least at a minimum all 184 blocks have to be surveyed for butterflies rather well. Okay. And so the idea is, and many of you on here, I know you know this, but I'm going to just reiterate it. The idea is anybody can do something for the butterfly atlas. We don't care if you're just watching butterflies in your butterfly garden on your walk with your dog, or whether you're like adopting a block and going full tilt on the butterfly atlas. It all builds up to being the atlas after 5 years. But if you can adopt a block and do checklisting, That's like the gold standard for us to get really good data for this atlas. And the way you do that is you go onto our block mapper, which I can show you in a little bit, and you adopt one of these blocks. And multiple people can adopt the same block. It doesn't really matter, but we're trying to spread people out so we get all these blocks adopted and surveyed. And a block, for example, this block right here, which is down near Putney Meadows, it's, 3 by 3 miles. It's a pretty big area. It feels like it's not a big area until you start trying to find all the butterflies in it, and going all over the place. It's a pretty big area. So you adopt it. And now, if you adopt it early, you have a lot of time to get the block done. And so we're trying to say is like record as many butterflies as we can on this block. And our goal, which is a pretty high bar to be honest with you, is to find 40 species on each block. I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen. We're not going to find, there's blocks in the Northeast Kingdom that there is no way you're going to find 40 species, but it's just our sort of our lofty goal of 40 species. And there are blocks that have already hit 40 species and you can definitely hit them. And if you look at a checklist of the butterflies of Vermont, it feels like you could hit them pretty easily. Um, and so it's our goal, 40 species. So when we hit 40 species, we try to nudge people like, hey, I know you're really into your block, but if you could move to another block and try to get us going there. So 40 species is sort of our lofty goal. And we do this, our recording methods are two, like I insinuated. One is checklisting in using eButterfly to put your data into. That records like your effort, like how far did you walk? How many people were counting the butterflies? How long were you out there? And then counting all the species you saw, even if you can't ID them to species, and try to get a photo for every one you can. That's the gold standard data. That's the stuff that we can use to do a lot of things with statistically. But like I said, we love presence only data too. We can do a lot with presence only data. And that's presence only data is the kind of stuff, like I said, you're walking your dog, you're in your yard raking leaves, you jump out of your parked car in a parking lot and see a butterfly, wherever it is, and you snap a picture of it. And you can either put presence only in our iNaturalist project or any butterfly. Either way, even if you're adopting a block or you're just freelancing wherever you want, like it all helps. But we really need to get these 184 blocks done. And by done, like I said, towards 40 species. And so I'm just reiterating that here just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then I really want to just quickly celebrate. Like the first kind of sort of Atlas of Butterflies was the 1995 checklist project where they just tried to figure out like how many species of butterflies might be in Vermont. And they had like 3,000 records, came up with 89 species. It was an amazing project. But you can see where they were. They were mostly around where there are academic institutions. And it was an amazing effort in 1995. And really, that effort was the one that really kickstarted me onto figuring out where butterflies were in Vermont. And then some of us here worked on the first Butterfly Atlas. We found 103 species. We had 36,000 records, and about 150 of us worked on it. And here we are now after the first 3 years we have 105 species now. We're already at 34,500 records. 2,500 people have given at least one butterfly picture to the Atlas. And we still have this year and next year, and we might have a third year after that. We're talking about that to get done. And what I want to really look at here is if you look at the first Atlas, it's not a shotgun approach. A lot of those triangles are inside these priority blocks. You can see how it happened. Because 150 of us, we had to be really diligent about concentrating on blocks. And so we were really good about hitting blocks. We did not get to 40 species on every block, but we did the best we could. And now, right now, if we look at all those red blocks, there's a lot of red blocks, especially up in the Northeast Kingdom, up here in Franklin County. There's a lot of blocks that don't have maybe a lot of green dots in them. And so we have a lot of data, but we're not necessarily hitting the blocks as hard as we need to. So pushing everyone more to hit more blocks. All right, so let's say you did adopt a block, or maybe you're just out taking a weekend road trip and you're like, I'm gonna drive somewhere else and hit a priority block. Totally cool to do that. Or maybe you're joining Dana and others have cooked up these block busting we're gonna do this summer, and so we're gonna join together on days and You can join these things, and we're going to try to do block busting together. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You have a block that you're going to. So this is actually one of my blocks right here. This is Queechy 2 block. And, you know, I'm still thinking about my whole thing about plants, habitat, find a butterfly. But I have this whole block to do right now. So the first thing I start doing is like, I can tell you, this happens to me every time. I'm like, I just blast full forward ahead. I'm like, I'm not worried about the plants or the butterflies. I just want to get out in the field and look at butterflies. And so I've done that already a bunch of times in this block. And what that does for me is, one, I might run into some really rare habitats by accident. But two, I start to get a feel for the block driving around it and doing some butterflying there. I find a lot of the common species and tick those off really quickly and get really good solid counts and checklists. But really, then once I settle down, I start to, and that settle down, I mean mentally, I start to realize like, wow, okay, if I'm going to hit 40 on this block, I'm going to have to work hard. And so what I do is I go to our block mapper, and I can show you this in a second. This is right off of our block mapper tool, right on the website. If you go there and you look, you can get a list of everything that's ever been found on your block, and it's live. So it brings the data in, all the digital data in live at the moment. So if it blinks for a second, it's because it's pulling a lot of data in. And so the first thing it shows you is, yeah, okay, this is Kent's block. It's Queechy 2, and all time, forever, from 1800 to 2030. It somehow knows into the future. Just kidding. Um, we found 46 butterfly species on that block. So if I'm going to hit 40 on this block, I'm going to have to work pretty hard because all time there's been only 46 found on there. The next thing I can look at is it's pulling data from eButterfly and it's pulled data from iNaturalist where we put all of the digital data. So the first atlas is in there, all kinds of museum records are in there, everything you can think of is in there. And that was last updated. This eButterfly is updated every day at 9 a.m. And so every day you're going to get the new date. iNaturalist updates, I think, once every 2 weeks or so. So if you put a butterfly into iNaturalist, it's not going to show up in the block mapper until they update to GBIF, to this special site where we grab the data from. And so you can see the last time they updated was on the 27th of April. Just so you know how fresh the data is. It's not going to be, if it's eButterfly, it's almost instantaneous. If it's iNaturalist, it's going to take a little bit. But you can get this, and this is a huge list of 46 tags that you can get here, and it tells you the last time you see it. You can go look at a map of it. You can go look at all kinds of stuff from here. But this is on my slide, not live. I can show you the tool later if you haven't played with it. You can make this so, oh, I just want to look at right now. So you can have an instant list of what you have right now. Or I want to compare the first atlas to the second atlas. You can do all that and start to see like, oh, the first atlas they found five other species that I don't have yet. So now you have a target list of things. All this just from going to the block mapper and doing that. The other thing I'll point out is these are the biophysical regions during the first atlas, and these are the number of species we found in those biophysical regions in the first atlas. So here my block is in what's called the Southern Vermont Piedmont. We found 90 butterfly species during the first atlas. So theoretically, if I was really lucky, I could find 90 species on this block, which is never going to happen. We're only at 46 right now, but there's an opportunity to find 90 species all time in this area. So it is doable to get 40, like I said, but again, it's a hard work, especially after you knock off all the common stuff. So to get into a little bit about some of the uncommon stuff, there's a couple kind of rankings that we do, and we can only do this. Why? Because of the butterfly atlases and all the data that you have all helped collect. We're able to start ranking things. And so we have these state conservation ranks, which go from extinct on up to very common. And so if you're an S1, you're kind of critically imperiled level. S5, you're like really kind of dirt common. 23% of we just re-ranked a lot of stuff with the first couple of years of this atlas. And right now we're standing at 23% of the species are in this kind of red zone. A quarter of Vermont's butterfly species have some kind of conservation issue or vulnerability. And then every 10 years, the state has to do a wildlife action plan in order to get funding to help do conservation for non-game species. In 2025, we just finished the report. All of your data went into this report. A lot of Vermont House of Life data went into it. And now, the first atlas, we had 15 species of what are called species of greatest conservation need. We've bumped that up to 18 now, that are going to be coming out in this new edition, which should be out any day. So there's these ways of us to rank these things, and you can actually see those online, whether it's what its S ranking is, its state conservation rank, or whether it's a species of greatest conservation need. But these tend to be like I said, the ones that are harder to find, that we actually really would like to find more and more of, so we know where all their populations are. And so if you look at these about 20 species of greatest conservation need in 2025, I kind of broke them down into quick little habitat types. So there's some that are found in grassland and meadows, some that are forest type species, and then there's some that are in wetlands. And then if I zip in even closer, and start to look at them, two of them, cobweb skipper and dusted skipper, which are really uncommon, are in dry grasslands. So you got to be in some kind of grassland that's really super dry and hot, and with its specialized host plant. Monarchs, which are up for listing federally, are kind of a special little case. We all know where we can find monarchs. They're pretty actually common in Vermont to find, but they are a species of greatest conservation need because their migration is in danger. And then we have another sort of grassland type thing, which is common branded skipper, which is new to the list. And this thing is really only in the northeastern sections of Vermont, on edges of forests, in these grasslands that are on open edges of forests, or in mixed forests at higher elevations, which we can talk about. So you can see I already started this myself, just breaking these things down. What do they like? So if you look at, here's some that like forests. Okay, juniper hairstreak. It's host plant. It's red cedar. If you don't have red cedar, you're not finding juniper hairstreak. Where's red cedar? Champlain Valley. Edwards hairstreak. Super rare. Only found in pine scrub oak forests. There's like two places in Vermont. You're not going to find it. Henry's elfin, which I'll get to in a second. This is one that was super rare before, but now we're starting to run into it in weird places in the forest. Why? I'll show you in a second. It's skipped to a new species. So you can go through this kind of thing and start to see what's going on with these. And I'm going to give you some examples of these in more depth. Um, and so these are all stuff that you could find in forests. We talked about hackberry emperor, and there's also tawny emperor. Floodplain forests, that's where you find hackberry trees. Um, and then we get to wetlands. We have bog elfin, which was recently found only in one bog. It's really hard to find. Bog copper, they're in a lot of different bogs. You got to be standing in a bog to find these things. Jutta arctic, you got to be in a certain kind of bog to find Jutta arctic. And then there's these, what I call sedge wetland skippers. These are all in these massive, big, sometimes not so big, sedge wetlands or sedge wet meadows. Dion skipper, black dash, two-spotted skipper, mulberry wing. If you're not wet, at least above your ankles in a sedge wetland, you're probably not going to find these species. You've got to be in these sedge wetland habitats. How do you find sedge wetland habitats? You can look at Google Earth or Google Maps for your block, and you start to see these open areas with beaver ponds or beaver wetlands around, and suddenly you realize, like, whoa, that's a big sedge area. I should figure out who owns that. I should see if I can wade out there in July and find these things. So this is what I start doing. I start making these matrix to figure out where I might find these things and what might be on my block. So before I talked about switching, the switchers. Um, I pointed out Henry's elfin switched. Um, this is off the Massachusetts butterfly site that I just grabbed today, and I should probably do this for Vermont. In fact, I'm going to do this for Vermont so everyone has this. But here's Henry's elfin switched to buckthorn, introduced buckthorn from vacciniums and nemopanthus. Um, and so now Henry's elfin, because it's starting to switch to buckthorn, which is an invasive species, is starting to be found in more places, and now might not be as rare. And so we have these things we call switchers, which have gone from presumed native host plants to zooming in on something that might be non-native and a lot more common. How they switch, we don't really know. So something like silvery blue has jumped to Calvetch. It's all over the place now. It used to be not all over the place. Common ringlets, they're all over the place now. They didn't used to be. They skipped. And you can look down this list. broadwing skipper was really rare in the first atlas. It was hard to find, but it skipped the Phragmites now. It used to only be on wild rice. It skipped the Phragmites now. You can go into Phragmites stands in the Champlain Valley and find broadwing skippers in there now. And so it's really important. Once again, here we're finding stuff that is switching off to a different host plant, and then the key to finding them is to go find that host plant. And it's also the key to understanding why a lot of them might be have expanded greatly over the last since the last atlas. So switchers, that's an important thing to take into occurrence. Another host plant switcher is this is a hot butterfly right now. We have not seen this butterfly since the middle of the last atlas. It's been decades since we've seen this in Vermont. It's common outside of the northeastern US apparently. You can find it, but in the northeastern US, it's literally almost disappeared. In fact, we thought it disappeared until recently. Silvery checker spot. It was recently found and switched to big leaf aster and a couple sites in Franklin County, Maine. Um, and so now we need to start seeing if we can find big leaf aster. And where do you find big leaf aster? Well, if you do that thing I showed you and go look up big leaf aster at Val and go look at the map, it looks like big leaf aster is everywhere. And so why aren't we finding silvery checker spots? I don't know. But the key might be is they found it in big leaf aster along old logging roads in Franklin County, Maine. It kind of mid higher elevations, 1,200 to 1,400 feet in mixed forests. So maybe we need to put that together with where we have big leaf aster in Vermont and see if we can go and find some of these in areas in Vermont and rediscover it. Again, it has not been seen in at least, I think, 2 decades. I can't remember the last record actually. And so this is one that might be proposed as endangered in Vermont very soon, and it's already probably going to be listed in other states in New England. Again, it's a switcher, so when the time comes in June, you'll probably hear a call from me. Hey, everybody, let's go out and try to find this thing. Here's one right now. I know that there's people on this call that have reported it already that's flying right now that is a high conservation responsibility species for us, West Virginia white. This butterfly is amazing because it will not leave a canopy. It won't fly in the open. If you fragment a forest, it will not fly across the field to another forest. It has to have canopy over it. But the other cool thing about it is it's only in super rich northern hardwood forests with toothwort, the host plant, which Kevin pointed out earlier before we got started that he actually watched one laying eggs, which is amazing, the other day. And so you can see all these white dots down here in southern Vermont and then going up into northern Vermont. So this is where we've seen West Virginia whites before. The problem is it's rapidly declining across its range. It's had a 98% decline across its range in the last 20 years since the last atlas. But what we think is it's probably doing okay in Vermont. As long as we take care of the forests here, we feel like we have a high conservation responsibility for this. It's not super rare when you run into it in these forests, but it has to have these specialized forests where there's toothwort. And it only flies before leaf out. So the trees now are starting to leaf out. So we have limited time to go find this bug on your blocks. You have to go now and find rich hardwood forests with toothwort and other beautiful spring ephemeral wildflowers in there before it leaves out. Once it leaves out, this butterfly's done. And the cool thing is we had a spatial intern a few years ago work with us and doing some modeling with Mike Hallworth in our office, who's an expert data modeler, using all the data that everyone's helped collect. We looked at climate change in the future and now. And so this blue is where we think there'll be habitat for this butterfly now, where it's now, and where it will be in the future after 100 years of climate change. And the good news is like it actually seems like it doesn't really leave Vermont. Like we can actually be a really good place to keep this species going. Versus further south, probably not, and also places where the forest is being fragmented too much. So we consider this a high conservation responsibility. So now you know the host plant, now you know the habitat, and now you just need a tiny bit of luck to go out and find it. Another one that's coming up really soon is early hair streak. And you can see it's coming up in May to go find it. Here's the phenological chart for flights of adults. It's going to happen mid-May to mid-June. And then there's a small second flight that happens in July, but it's really hard to find them then. This butterfly is unbelievable. It will knock your socks off when you see it, if you get to see it. Kevin and Terry Armada and others down in southern Vermont know exactly where to go look for it, but we need to find more populations of this. Here's the problem with this butterfly. It's got a very short flight and it stays in the canopy. It only feeds on American beech, basically. It does feed on one other species, but not as much. It feeds on mostly American beech. And it turns out it only feeds on the nuts of American beech. And so it's really specialized. And so to find this thing, we all know where there's beech. There's beech all over the place, but you have to have beech that actually fruits and doesn't get diseased. And so you'd really need a reasonable beach stand to find this. And then you have to be able to find it because you can't walk across the canopy. At least I can't. I wish I could because they're up in the canopy. They're where all the fruits are. And so really, this is another one of those things that you got to catch it puddling like this. And so you need to find a dirt road or a dirt opening in the forest near beech trees, and they come down usually. I don't know, Kevin can reiterate this, but I feel like it's like a mid-morning thing is the best time. They come down out of the canopy and they puddle on these dirt spots, picking up um, minerals and whatnot. And that's when you can find them, see them, photograph them, record them on your block. Again, we know the host plant, we know their habits, we know their habitat, and then we have to have a little luck. Um, Later in the fall, going into this is more of like an August bug, common branded skipper. And this is a map from the first atlas. We only found it in the northeast part of the state. And so right away, you can look at this and be like, huh, if my block is way down here in southern Vermont, I'm probably not going to find this species. Doesn't mean you can't look, but you're probably not going to find it. You're probably going to find something else. Um, and so it's way up here right now. And it only flies in August and it likes um, certain kinds of grasses, fescues, and it likes mid-elevation, usually cold forest, mixed cold forests in August. And so for me, like the quintessential place to find this, believe it or not, up here is like if I want to instantly find this, I'll go to the Stowe ski area and walk halfway up the ski slopes and start searching for it. It loves to be in those ski slope openings. It likes openings of cold northern like forests. And so it's kind of a semi-open grassland type species, but it has to be nestled into the forest. And so once again, we're not going to find it unless we know where to look and what kind of habitat to look for this sort of butterfly that we think is actually declining in the Northeast. Um, anyway, I could go through a lot more stories. It's already 12:50. So if we got other ideas and things, I'm happy to stay on longer if people want to too and show you how the block mapper works if you want a quick lesson for that. And anything else you want to, but I kind of just open it up with our last. We don't have that much time because I got so excited about some of these stories. I took more time than I thought, but let's just open it up and see what y'all think.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to unmute and, throw them out. One question that Jill had earlier was that I wanted to double check is that so some of the priority blocks kind of hang over into another state, particularly New Hampshire. If you are in that block and you photograph a butterfly in New Hampshire, does it still count?
Yeah, I get that all the time. Like it does count, but the because of some of our programming, it might not show up on your block when you're using some of the tools.
Okay.
It's which is a pain, I know. Exactly. That is my too. Like it's more like um but a block is a block. I mean, it is the Vermont Butterfly Atlas, but like if the block leaks into New Hampshire or if you really want to go across the border, if any leak into Quebec, you probably
Yeah,
could.
okay.
It's totally fair game, but it won't show up in some of these tools, I'm afraid.
So by tools, Kent is talking about, the block mapper. There's a way to see what you've done so far, so it won't show up there necessarily.
Yeah,
Um,
I just put the block mapper on the screen. It's right here, the block mapper tool it's the Atlas block mapper is what we're talking about if you're not familiar with it.
yeah. Another thing that Kevin had posted is for the early hair streaks, he feels like 11 to 1 is a pretty good time to go look for them.
11 to 1. Awesome. Great. I feel like we need to start collecting things like this. I need to start putting all these notes somewhere about this because these are really important details.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin, for that. He does say Terry.
Yeah,
Is
Tara's
Terry on
not
the
in
call?
today, but
Oh, dang it.
she'll
Okay.
probably watch the recording later and can
Yeah.
respond to the comments on YouTube. I do have to say, I'm highly in support of creating some sort of butterfly database for these sorts of information because I'm always looking for things for the butterfly quizzes, and it turns out it's pretty difficult to find information that you think would be pretty common about butterflies. Like, are they migratory or not?
Yeah, I
It's,
hear you. This morning, on a whim, I was like, man, I should have a complete list of like every butterfly species in Vermont and all the known host plants or groups of host plants that they're on. Like, how hard could this be? They're butterflies. We study the heck out of them. We should know this. And so I asked our biologist, Desiree Narango, like, who specializes in this stuff. Like, she's amazing. And I'm like, Desiree, is there anything like that? And she's like, no.
yeah.
So, I mean, there is, but there isn't. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there isn't for this. And so I ended our conversation this morning by telling Desiree, like, I'm going to chat with you about how I might start to make a database just for even for host plants, for at least for Vermont. Like, and then be able to record because they might be different, right? So
Hmm.
it's really, I bring it up also because it's really important if you do witness something as a host plant to put it in your comments or put it in as an interaction in iNaturalist, which I'm happy to explain to people at some point how to do that so that it's saved. Like, Kevin saw egg laying. That's amazing. That's a
Hmm.
host plant record right there. Which we already knew that was a host plant, but still, the more the merrier. It may be different here in Vermont than it is, say, in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or something. So it's really important also about scale. Like where's the one host plant someplace that might be something different here in Vermont.
Yeah, and I think that's probably particularly interesting for those switcher species because I'm sure that species, particularly those that are using invasive plants, are going to be different by population by population.
100%.
So Melanie asks, is looking for tips on finding butterflies in the canopy, which is a great question.
Oh gosh. Canopy walkway.
Yeah.
No, I keep saying, really, like d old dirt roads along in these stands are really important because again, the butterflies they do come down. You know, there's many examples of that. Like I said, Eastern pine elfins, the early hair streaks, like a lot of them, they come out of the canopy to get these essential minerals and salts. And that's really the best way. And like, I think Brian mentioned this. Was it last week Brian gave his talk? Yeah,
Yeah.
Brian mentioned this about like there's a picture of Brian laying there in his talk last week when photographing butterflies where all these tiger swallowtails were puddling. And he was like with some chagrin, and I'll say with some chagrin this time, like peeing on a roadway and then coming back later is an option. Like it does sometimes work. Or I've even like carried like poop and put it alongside the road from like something I found like coyote scat and put it where I can see it. Or you can even put fruit out and do that and
Mhm.
they'll come down to rotting fruit. Like there's a lot of things you can make, try to force them and then just keep checking it every day kind of thing if it's not too far away. But I mean, the things that are in the canopy, like I really wish we could honestly spy on them because I think there's probably a lot going on up there. We hear about it in the rainforest, but it's happening here too.
Yeah, and there's a untested theory that someone brought up, if anyone would like to test it in their own butterfly adventures, is that, and these puddling species are also social, and they can have social contagion and be drawn to groups of butterflies. And so if you print out a little model of the butterfly and put it down and see if that attracts other butterflies down to come and try and puddle in that area.
Seriously?
Uh, yeah, someone suggested that. They said they've tried it with tiger swallowtails before. So if anyone wants to take a shot at that, let us know how it goes.
Wow, that's interesting. We could print out little early hair streaks and put them all over the place. And
Hmm. Kevin also says drones. which is kind of what I was thinking too.
Honestly, like I don't know, Kevin. Kevin comes up with these ideas like this, and then we act on them. Like he's had some ideas in the first atlas, and we find the species. So, going to some of the stands that Kevin and Terry know, and having drones that can see small enough or videography small enough would might be really insightful for what's going on with early hair streaks up in the canopy.
Yeah.
It's not a off the charts idea. We should do that.
Kevin also has a kind of technical question about surveying. He says, when you're surveying a dead-end road, recording mileage, do you usually just record one-way distance or both-way distance?
We follow the eBird rule at eButterfly and one-way distance. And I know it's a problem because sometimes people are putting two-way distance.
Mhm.
But it's supposed to be one-way distance. So if you walk out a road counting butterflies, when you walk back, you should only add butterflies that you think you didn't count, so you don't double count. So let's say you walked out and you counted, 45 Canadian tiger swallowtails, and you walk back and you counted 55 on your way back, then your count is 55. It's not 45 plus 55 or new species, you add those. So yeah, one way distances and don't double count. The other thing I like to do is I know people groan, but like if you walk out to the end of the dirt road, I stop my count and tuck it away as a checklist and I start a new count and I do a new count on the way back. Because when we have more and more counts like that, we can actually use some fancy stats, I'll call them, to start to get at what is called detectability. And
Mhm.
that is like none of us are perfect at finding everything out there. Like we're always missing stuff. And so when we start to have repeated counts and repeated things like this, we can use some really interesting fancy stats to get at how good has the detectability been for us and what are we missing. We can actually start to make predictions about what we missed. The other thing I'll say too about checklisting is like I try to probably err more on, I do a lot more checklists probably than most people and I break them into pieces. And so I do that because I like them to be tagged to certain habitats. And so if I'm like working an old field and I work it
Mhm.
for 45 minutes and I'm like, oh, I should walk down this woods road, which is a completely different habitat. I will stop my checklist and make it old field checklist. I spent, 45 minutes there and I walked this distance. And then I'll start a new checklist. Oh, this is my new checklist. It's an old road and it's this kind of habitat. Now I'm going on a linear walk and I put record that as a whole new checklist. So I really try to pay attention to the habitats that I'm surveying and break those into checklists when I can.
So if you're an experienced butterflyer and you're looking for a new challenge, you can start breaking up your checklists.
I know. I know plenty of people are groaning at this, but it's not, you don't have to, but it's just, these are just making your data even more valuable kind of deal.
Mhm. All right, well, it's 1 o'clock. So we can stick around for a couple more minutes, but I just wanted to kind of wrap up a little bit for those of you who do need to leave. So thank you all for attending today, and thank you to Kent for providing us all this information about the Butterfly Atlas and also a bunch of cool butterflies and their habitats that we have in the state. Our last webinar is going to be on May 20th at 12 o'clock, and it's also going to be with Kent. Kent's going to be walking us through our really fun new tiger swallowtail species. We now have 3 species in the state, and they can be very difficult to tell apart. And Kent has been working with Amber Jones, one of our staff biologists, to try and figure out exactly what characteristics you should be looking for to ID those 3 species. So I'm going to drop the registration to that event in the chat. That's the Zoom link. I'll go grab that. And yeah, hopefully we will see you there.
Yeah, and I'm willing to hang out if anybody wants to look at anything, but also if any volunteers ever need help with one of the tools online or anything like, you can just email me and we could just get on a Zoom call together and share a screen and I can show you how to use a tool or walk you through something or whatever. I'm happy to have like little, I don't know, for lack of a better word, mini office hours to like help people through anything like using eButterfly, using iNat, whatever. I know that I couldn't do it for like everyone because there's so many people in Vermont that does it, but I'm definitely do it for butterfly watchers on the Atlas. So drop me an email if you need help with something. I may regret saying that, but
You can also email me as well. I have less knowledge than Kent, but I can still help you out with a lot of iNaturalist or eButterfly questions. Kevin wants to know if the dusted skipper is going to be out soon.
he wants to go find it again. So this is a great little story because Kevin was in the first Atlas. Dusted skipper is one of those butterflies that likes dry grasslands,
Mm.
and it likes blue stem grass as its host plant. And so finding that in Vermont's kind of tricky. And Kevin, during the first Atlas, was driving up 91 and noticed like on the side of the road, like, wait a second, there's blue stem growing on the side of 91.
Mm.
Um, we should go. So then he called me up and he's like, we should go look at those. Well, it's not so easy going along the interstate. You'll get in trouble pretty fast. So it took a little bit, but we got permission from the transportation department, and Kevin and Brian Pfeiffer and myself met a crew down there in Brattleboro, and we didn't know it, but like they took a dump truck and everything and like took us out on the interstate, and we stopped at places where Kevin had seen the plant growing. And sure enough, right away,
Mm.
like we find Dusted Skipper, and we find it everywhere that Kevin saw this plant growing. And the plant was planted by the agency because it's a good plant for along interstates that are dry and hot. Um, and it was great because the road crew too kind of got into it and started catching the butterflies and looking at them and got really kind of excited about finding these little things too. And so we want to go back and resurvey along the interstate, but I'm still working, Kevin. I have to up my work on this a little bit, trying to get the actual permit for to be allowed to be along the interstate. And I'm not finding the right person yet to give us that permission. So I'm glad you needled me because I'm writing it down on my piece of paper right now to make sure we try to get that done this year. But great story. Just driving along, sees the host plant. This is and says, "Whoa, ding, ding, ding. We should go look at that." And sure enough, there they have them right along the interstate. So the interstate is kind of like it's a nice little refuge for these little butterflies. Exactly. People retiring means it's harder for me to find the right person to talk to. All right, Dana, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you as well. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I will be sending out the follow-up email and the recording probably tomorrow morning for this. And other than that, we will see you hopefully in 2 weeks back here to learn about how to tell tiger swallowtails apart. All right, have a
And
good week,
all right,
everyone.
everybody, enjoy.